Fortnite has been around for 8 years, which means we have seen thousands of updates. But what about the updates that we didn't get? Epic has scrapped a ton of content over the years, and today I'm going over 30 different updates that never made it into Fortnite. And we start with update number 1, first person mode. From day one, players have been asking for a sort of first person battle royale, and we were very used to third person in other BRs like Call of Duty or PUBG, but Fortnite being in third person definitely felt a little different. The request got so overwhelming that Epic even updated their FAQ to explain why they didn't think that first person mode belonged in Fortnite. Over the years, leaks have surfaced about first person mode coming to BR, but at this point, it looks like Epic scrapped the idea. Instead, they gave us ballistic mode and the option to add first person mode in creative. And while that was fun for a little bit, it doesn't seem to be very popular in creative or ballistic mode. And I still think there's potential for first person mode to be fun in battle royale, maybe if it's just limited to 0 build. A lot of this list includes game features, weapons, cosmetics, and even a whole entire season that was canceled by Epic. Number 2 is proximity chat. So Epic has been experimenting with the idea of proximity chat in BR for a long time. Players and streamers have definitely wanted it for content. So Epic implemented it in creative maps, showing that it's technically possible. But I understand why Epic has been hesitant to add it to the main modes. But the potential is still there, and actually recently there has been leaks about a proximity chat battle royale mode, but it's going to be limited to basically an LTM, just one mode where you can have proximity chat, and actually you would be allowed to team up with other players in this mode. But would it ever come to the full scale battle royale? Probably not. At 3, we have the old inventory system. OGs may remember the old Fortnite inventory system. It was pretty bad. The old menu would take up entire screens and almost had 0 opacity. If anyone was in front of you, you wouldn't notice unless you were pretty much already being shot at. This feature is one of the few on the list that I'm glad was scrapped because it was horrible and was replaced with a much better UI. Number 4 is the friends requests voice line. Epic once tested voice lines that would play whenever you got a friend request. This sounds harmless, but for anyone streaming, this was going to be a nightmare. Summit 1G actually got hit with this live, and every single friend request triggered an audio line.
Aw, cool. Someone wants to be friends.
What? Once his chat realized what was happening, they started spamming him non-stop just to troll him, and it was hilarious to watch but completely unworkable as a real feature, and thankfully Epic scrapped it very quickly.
Me for my entire shield.
Friend request incoming. We've got a friend request incoming.
Number 5 is 200 player lobbies. This potential update accidentally got leaked back in 2020. Tfue showed a message on stream about Epic asking for 200 players to help do a competitive test. Nothing really ever came of it afterwards. Talks about 200 lobbies started again in 2024. Epic Games CEO Tim Sweeney confirmed that 200 player lobbies weren't added originally in Fortnite because of server limitations. This is something Epic Games wants to change with the eventual release of Unreal Engine 6. And I'm very much down for the idea, especially making the main Battle Royale mode feel more lively with 200 players and less bots. That would be absolutely insane. Number 6 is smart builds. So smart builds were originally leaked all the way back in Chapter 2, Season 7. There was even a bug in creative where players saw the option, but you weren't actually able to use them. The idea was wild. A smart box allowed players to build an entire 1x1 with just a click of one button. Smart towers where only walls and ramps were used to gain elevation, similar to 90s. Smart bridges with only floors and ramps, which could have been used to tarp through endgame. And smart auto, which is basically like ramp rushing, but it all happened in a single click. Now, we did not get this concept, but we eventually did get simple edit, which allows you to edit with a single click. But as far as smart builds go, I'm not sure this is something we're ever going to see. Number 7 is the Gulag. That's right. After the release of Warzone in 2020, a lot of people were asking for and expecting a Gulag mechanic to be added in Fortnite. The Gulag is like a second chance 1v1 where the winner gets to drop back into the Battle Royale. We could have sent players into a special 1v1 box fight or build fight, and it seemed like Epic Games was testing this concept with the abductor UFOs in Chapter 2 Season 7, which a lot of people loved. Eventually, it was added to the game in its own way through Reload, since you're able to have a set amount of lives per match. And since Reload is a core game mode, I doubt we'll see a Gulag mechanic in the main BR. Number 8 is kill cams. This was requested practically since the release of Battle Royale. We do have replay mode, but imagine a feature that lets you see the last few seconds from your opponent's POV before you die. You'd get instant feedback, know where you messed up, potentially find hackers, or at least know if somebody is up to no good. Like imagine just watching this crazy moment, but from a kill cam. Number 9 is underwater swimming and Atlantis. There was leaks about underwater swimming that started showing up towards the end of Chapter 2, Season 2. Season 3's map flooding made it feel like the perfect time for a diving mechanic. Epic had introduced swimming at the start of Chapter 2 and were experimenting with new ways to expand water gameplay. At least so we thought. There were even underwater bunkers around the map to support this idea. With Aquaman being the hidden skin for the season, it seemed like a no-brainer that we would eventually get an underwater Atlantis POI. Instead, we got stuck with Coral Castle. And until now, we haven't really gotten to experience any underwater combat. At 10, we have a storm splitting mechanic. Fortnite Storm has seen a ton of changes over the years, from moving zones to added phases, and at one point Epic even considered storm splitting, where the storm would split off into 2 different circles and then eventually converge back into one. And it could have even been 3 or even 4 circles. And it sounds absolutely wild, but you can understand why it was never added into the game. Endgames would have been complete chaos, but hopefully Epic experiments with this mechanic in an LTM in the future. Number 11 is Fortnite's adventure RPG open world sandbox mode. Back in 2023, leaks revealed details about a brand new open world game mode that would have been completely different from Lego Fortnite. Epic was working on an MMO at one point, and most people believe it has been scrapped. It looks like they might have recycled some of those ideas and brought them into Fortnite Lego, and the code name for this mode was Arnold. It was going to be open world, have its own storyline, dynamic POIs that looked to have different levels of difficult bosses, wildlife, NPCs, quests, and more. From the images that we've seen of the mode, it looked like it was going to be sick. And despite Fortnite adding tons of new game modes, Arnold has not been updated ever since those leaks came out. So most people think it's never coming out, but I'm still hoping we get some sort of Fortnite MMO because I would definitely be a fan. At 12, we have Return of the Grotto. Chapter 2's Grotto was legendary, from Brutus's minigun to the legendary Tfue and Chap off-spawn beef and competitive, and one of the best vaults we had back in Chapter 2. But then the map flooded and the Grotto was completely underwater. We all thought it would eventually come back though, because Epic was constantly draining the water out of the Grotto. Literally every week the water was dropping down. So all season it was assumed that at one point we would be able to re-enter the POI again. But once Chapter 3 hit, we got a new map and we didn't get the Grotto until Chapter 2 Remix, when Eminem moved in and it changed to the Spaghetti Grotto. 13, we have the block returning in Chapter 3. There were rumors all through Chapter 3 that the block might make a return. It eventually came back in Chapter 3 Season 3 as the block 2.0, built right into Tilted Towers. Fortnite creators could design 3 different buildings: the restaurant, the apartments, and the shops, using creative mode. The catch was submissions were limited to certain props and rules, so there wasn't as much creative freedom as the original block, which we had back in Chapter 1, where people could create their own custom POIs and eventually make it into Fortnite. But now with UEFN, players have complete freedom to create their own maps entirely, and because of that, it seems like Epic will not bring the block back in the same way we had it before. But that's not the only thing that was rumored to return in Chapter 3, because at 14 we have the Zapatron. It is one of the most infamous weapons in Fortnite history. It first appeared briefly in Chapter 1 for about 30 minutes before Epic immediately took it out. But Epic actually teased that they were planning on bringing it back in Chapter 3. During the Chapter 2 finale, if you floated in the water long enough, you would see multiple Easter eggs drift by. There was a Durr Burger, random props, and even the Zapatron. Later, it popped up again in a secret room in the Imposter's LTM. All signs pointed towards Epic adding it into loot pool for Chapter 3, but Epic scrapped this last second. We didn't see it return until Fortnite OG Season 2, and even then it only lasted for a single weekend. But they did bring it back recently with the new permanent OG mode, and it was in for most of the season. But let's talk about the canceled season that happened in Chapter 3. Vibin was not the original plan. There were a ton of mechanics that were fully fleshed out that we still haven't seen in game, like an entire cooking feature that had several different dishes you could craft, new wildlife like bears and rats that were supposed to be added that seemed to have more fleshed out combat than some of the wildlife we've seen, like the boars and the raptors. There was even supposed to be flying wildlife that we could ride, but instead we got Vibin, which was a big farewell party for Donald Mustard. It's crazy to think about what might have happened had we gotten the other version of Vibin, the other secret deleted season. And there have been plenty of exotics and weapons that have been scrapped. At number 16, a lot of these happened in Chapter 3. There were some exotics like the boogie launcher, the bow minigun, the beanbag shotgun, and the hop machine gun. Some of these sounded absolutely insane. The boogie launcher was found in the game files in Chapter 3, and this was similar to a grenade launcher, but it shot out boogie bombs. And I'll be honest, that sounds kind of overpowered, so maybe it's a good thing it never made it into the game. Now, the bow minigun fired infinite explosive bows that would deal 19 damage each. It's likely that Epic might have recycled and reused some of these ideas for the Lawless season, but a few of these hopefully never come to the game. There was another item that was going to be so insane it could have completely changed how games played out. At 17, it was the golden ticket. This was going to be a legendary item that once you used it, you got your own personal battle bus that revived your entire squad. Not only would this have been a crazy item in general, but it was actually in the files all the way back in Season 2. The reboot van wasn't even added into the game itself until Season 8. So just imagine how crazy those early games of Fortnite would have played out with this item. At 18, we have the throwing axe. This was first added in the files in Chapter 2, Season 8, and a lot of people compared it to the paper bomb kunai mythic. While others thought it would be more like Thor's Stormbreaker from Chapter 1, it was even supposed to be a sideways weapon. Leakers also found references to fire with this item, meaning it might have been able to burn down wood and trees. There was a lot of proof that this item was meant to be added to the game, but it never was. At 19, we have the radioactive smoke grenade, and this sounds crazy. It showed up in the files all the way back in update version 8.4, and Epic never really gave real details. The community kind of forgot about it, and it's clear on why though. At the time, we already had stink bombs and the poison dart trap. Epic probably thought it was going to be too similar to stink bombs and decided to scrap it. Because imagine pulling up to an end game and the whole zone is filled with radioactive smoke. That would have been ridiculous. At 20, we have Der Burger consumables, because back in May 2018, data miners found some weird unreleased consumables in the files. They weren't apples or mushrooms, they were actually Der Burgers and Der Shakes. These would have been found in the restaurants and acted just like normal consumables that we have today. For some reason, Epic scrapped them, probably because things like apples and mushrooms made way more sense to scatter around the map. But honestly, Epic probably missed out on the easiest brand deal ever, because a Der Burger meal with a shake sounds kind of fire. At 21, we have the Monsoon Pistol. Epic almost added what would have been the most broken weapon in the loot pool as early as the pre-season. It was called the Monsoon Pistol, and OGs thought that the minigun was broken. Well, this was basically a minigun in pistol form. It wouldn't even have to charge up like the one from Save the World. You could just absolutely demolish anyone up close. It might have not been a healthy thing to add to the game, but it would be interesting if Epic ever decides to rework it and add it into Battle Royale. At 22, we have Mortal Kombat LTM boons and mythics. If you don't remember the Mortal Kombat collab, I don't blame you. People had high hopes when data miners leaked that it was coming, like a Mortal Kombat LTM, boons, and even more mythics, but most of it got scrapped halfway through development and leakers didn't even mention it. The classic Combat LTM featured only combat kit mythics to fight each other in an arena with a rumored ranked mode for this LTM. And honestly, that sounds like it would have been really cool. Boons were also planned to be added, like the Icy Slide to give you a boost when sliding and Zero Chance, which gives you a 0-point dash when you crack an enemy's shield. But it looks like they just took parts of the LTM and threw them into Battle Royale. At 23, we have the scrapped My Hero Academia mythics, the Uraraka, and the Bakugo gloves. So it's kind of surprising that we did not get these two mythics from the My Hero collab. Two more were leaked but never got released. Uraraka would have given us a zero gravity effect. Primary fire would have slowed the gravity of other items or players by attaching a balloon to it. Its secondary fire applies low gravity to yourself for 20 seconds. Byakugo's mythic would have given us a gauntlet doing knockback damage to players. Both never made it into the game, leaving only Deku Smash and Todoroki's Ice Wall in the final collab. But who knows, if we get another wave of My Hero Academia skins, these might eventually come to the game. At 24, we have the prone mechanic. We have sprinting, mantling, double jumping, wall running, and even swimming, but something that has been leaked over and over is the ability to go prone. And honestly, I don't think this is really a mechanic that Fortnite needs. It might make it a lot easier to camp in buildings and bushes, but for the most part, Fortnite doesn't really have that kind of play style. It might be a cool feature for creative maps because I can see people coming up with some pretty cool maps that involve this mechanic. At 25, we have Kato Thorn's Vault. Stealing from Kato Thorn's Vault was actually supposed to be a lot more challenging than it was. After landing at Eclipse Estate, breaking past security, defeating the Revenant Kato, and picking up his vampiric blade, the vault was intended to be filled with a toxic gas, but the idea was ultimately scrapped for being too difficult. Maybe Epic figured that the average player would have a hard time beating the boss and then having to deal with some sort of toxic gas, so they just scrapped that. At 26, we have the Fortnite X Formula 1 skins. And I remember being pretty excited about these potential skins. We've already seen collabs with Ferrari and Lewis Hamilton, and even Max Verstappen said he wants his own skin. But back in December 2023, a huge leak revealed 10 customizable Fortnite Formula 1 skins. 5 male skins, 5 female skins, plus a back bling glider, pickaxe, and an emote. The designs actually looked really clean and they were pretty much ready to drop, but then everything got wiped from the files out of nowhere. Right after, we started seeing teasers for Chapter 5 release for the Metaverse and Rocket Racing, and a Rocket Racing Pass was previewed and players thought the Formula 1 drop would be coming with it. Months passed and Rocket Racing went live and the skins never showed up. Most likely, Epic scrapped the collab because F1 changes so fast, drivers, sponsors, branding, so it's likely that the original bundle no longer made any sense, but honestly, there's so many Formula 1 fans around the world that this collab needs to eventually happen. At 27, we have an unreleased Juice WRLD skin. Everyone knows about the Juice WRLD skin. If you logged in over the last week of November 2024, you would get the cell-shaded Juice WRLD skin for free. Another variation hit the item shop for 1,800 V-Bucks, but that skin may have been incomplete. Because according to Juice WRLD's former manager, his skin was originally going to have glowing dreadlocks that were reactive to emotes. And Epic seems to have scrapped that version of his skin, but the community is still happy with what we got. And at 28, we have the custom battle bus wraps. Yes, this would have allowed you to change your own battle bus each time you loaded into a match. We've seen multiple battle bus skins during the holidays or special Fortnite events, so it's always a possibility, but it's also likely that Epic felt there was already so many different types of cosmetics in the game, and this one wasn't really necessary. We also recently got the ability to add jam tracks to your locker, and while you glide in, you can even hear those jam tracks. So maybe Epic chose that as a way to customize your drop instead of the bus. And then at 29, we have weapon and back bling charms. You might remember when weapons and back bling charms first leaked back in 2019. They've popped up in the files multiple times since then with fully finished designs. The community loved the idea so much that people even started making their own concepts. But Epic likely scrapped the feature because weapon skins aren't seen often enough in third person, and the charms would be seen even less. With modes like Ballistic, though, we could see them make a return if those modes take off, but it's not quite there yet. And honestly, with how crazy everyone's going over Labubus, if these came to the game, we would definitely see a Labubu x Fortnite collab in the works. And at 30, we have a different type of emote classified as a shout emote. These work more like voice lines from Overwatch. There were already a few planned, like the classic Leroy Jenkins meme and the damn from Friday. And Courage even had one ready to go where you hear him say, bow down to Booga.
Bow down to Booga!
I think there's still a lot of potential for these to work within the game. Voice lines would be extremely hilarious, but they most likely are being saved for a future update. Those are 30 different updates that have most likely been scrapped, but you never know when it comes to Fortnite. Things can change on the fly. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe.